Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today on the show, I have the great pleasure of Elaine Hart. So good morning to you, Elaine.
Morning, Jules.
Good to
Thanks
see
for having
you.
me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're with us today. So you're the founder and chief banana officer. That's an interesting title, which I'm sure we'll talk about, of Power Fitness Events, and that's all about an immersive group ride experience that connects and empowers people, transforming their mental and physical fitness. And today, we're going to be exploring with you what makes you thrive, because that's a little bit of the essence of who you are and what you do, and you help others to do that. So we're going to explore that later. But before we go there, I'd like to understand a little bit more about what do you love about what you do?
What do I love about what I do? I ride my bike, and that is sort of where it begins and ends for me in terms of movement. I love movement. For me is energy. And I do believe that energy is not created or destroyed, it's transformed. And that's where the transformation piece comes for me. So really it's movement. That's what gets me excited. I love getting out in nature. So I love taking what I do and taking out nature and people.
And when did you realize that the movement or riding your bike, getting in nature, sort of really sort of hit you, resonated with you, and thought, yeah, this is what I like doing?
I think we're born with it. I believe I was born to ride my bike, and I don't remember a time when I wasn't riding my bike. And I've overcome some of my most difficult challenges, and I've made my happiest memories riding my bike. So that for me is everything. But I do believe that it is something we are born with. We are born with everything we need. Everything we need is inside of us. It's actually about stripping it back, tapping into it, and sort of checking in with yourself and saying, who was I before the world told me who I should be?
Mm.
And that's really where it comes from for me. And because I've not always been chief banana officer, I've not always ridden my bike as my job, which I love. I really needed to get still and connect with what I know makes me thrive.
Mm.
Because I don't. For me, that idea of thriving isn't. It's relative. It's subjective. It's individual as we are. But I think it can be so heavily influenced by outside, the media, social media, what society
Mm.
perceives is what we should be doing. And I think we get so wrapped up in that rules word, that should,
Mm.
wherever that comes from, and going, the gap between where I am and what I need is ultimately that stress. And that
Mm.
stress is all about resisting. And if we surrender, if we go with it, then we thrive. And so for me, that motion of being on my bike
Mm.
and the connecting with all the senses. So if you're out in nature and you've got the breeze and you've got the sunshine and you've got the perspective because you're up high, and maybe you're looking sort of, I'm thinking about the Trundle. That's one of my favourite places to be in Goodwood.
Mm.
We're both in that area, so we know it really well. But getting up high and then looking out and thinking, wow, or getting to the beach and looking out and the
Mm.
vast horizon, and it just brings everything into perspective. Because I think as well, that whole notion of what thriving is feels so unreachable for so many people. And
Mm.
for me, making that transition from what I did in luxury brands and motorsport for all that time, and I saw
Mm.
something completely different. I got a perspective in a different way, in a different kind of richness. I, you know, it's actually when you're aligned with what is, true to you, and there's no shoulds
Mm.
about it, it flows. And I just think, that is so. It's knowing what you need and then being okay to own that
Mm.
and say, this is what I need. And that might mean that then you need to shed. You may need to shed your job. You may need to shed some people. You may need to shed some routine. And I love a bit
Mm.
of shedding, because that is kind of stripping it back and going, yeah,
Mm.
no, this is what I was born with. And this is, that's my responsibility to live in that truest, freest way. So
Now,
yeah,
you've said a ton of stuff there, and I'd like to just unpick
I
some of that.
typically say a ton of stuff, Jules. I
No,
love
no,
that
no,
kind of
no,
chat.
and it is good, and it is some good stuff. I just want to just tap into some of that, and because we're talking about thriving today. My podcast is called Helping Organisations Thrive. I started this 2 years ago, And thriving has become a concept sort of in sort of the pandemic, post-pandemic, where people went from surviving to thriving and that type of thing. But it's always been there. It's always been around. First up, I want to understand from you, what is thriving? How do we sort of conceptualize it? How do we sort of know that we are thriving? So when you say you'd be thriving now, is it a point in time? Is
yeah,
it
no, the ironic thing for me is I'm talking about thriving and I'm absolutely surviving. So I've very much got a double-sided banana this morning. So surviving, thriving. And I think it's such a spectrum. And I know what I need to thrive. And a chief one for me is movement. I'm not moving right now. And that was because I had a situation with my tech this morning, completely out of my control. And typically, when I'm being interviewed, when I'm doing my job in its fullest, I'm riding my bike. It's where I make most sense. When I'm moving, that is where I'm. It's my happy place, and it is the place where I thrive. And so, whether or not, sometimes things are just out of our control. We can control so much on the way up, but at some point we've got to let go. And that was where I was at this morning, because we're constantly striving. We're constantly striving. But I think where you strive from to get from that place of absolute survival to thriving it's controlling what you can control, and just you can't. There are outside influences that are just going to, for some people it may be their kids, for some people it may be they've woken up and then something's happened in the house. There's various things that could happen in the day, and those obstacles, they're not in the way, they kind of become the way. And for somebody else, you could say, well, yeah, she looks like she's got her stuff together. She looks like, she's kind of, but for me inside, I'm thinking this is not where I feel in my flow, because, things have come up in my day, but that's kind of normal. And I think, it's that idea of, we're not all thriving all of the time, and that's okay. It's not, and it's not finite. But every moment of every day, you can choose to say, what is it that's going to make me thrive? And so, I can make some small steps. When it becomes overwhelming is when we're going for the whole staircase, and it's that feeling of like, I've just got to be right there, right now. And actually, but if you just start to make some small steps, that kind of momentum and that practice then brings you into that place where you think, okay, I'm making progress. And that whole idea of, we hear it all the time, progress and not perfection. And I think as leaders, we can all be leaders and still require some guidance. You can absolutely be both. You can be, absolutely leading from a place of humanity. I mean, yes, in a elevated, privileged position as a leader, but you're human, and things happen in your day. And actually, if you can relate and connect people so much more if you just show a bit of realness. You can't have a real relationship without that reality. And so I think if you want a true, deep, rich connection with people, and that's what I created, that's what I wanted POW to be, was a safe space for people to connect and move. And the movement bit for me is because when you are moving, you are shifting energy, and you give yourself that opportunity to then breathe in all of the good stuff. But the good stuff is the real stuff. And you've got to really feel it. And whatever's going on in that day, you've just got to go there. You just can't resist it. You've just got to stop. And when you don't know what to do nothing. Get really still and say, what do I need? What do I need? Who do I need? Like, who is actually going to contribute to this? Because we know that there's various elements in life which are contagious, and one of them is anxiety. Anxiety is wonderfully contagious. Fear is wonderfully contagious. All of these things. But actually, what's really beautifully contagious is vulnerability, is love, is all of these things that actually can be really help you get from that place of surviving through to thriving. But it's not a big leap. Actually, those steps, a bit like the courage. Encourage the big one for you, I know, but it's not the big leap. It's the small steps that are going to get you there. And that's the same with that spectrum of surviving to thriving. And actually, I think where you need to start when you're leading from that place of humanity is say, if you're surviving and not thriving today, that's okay. because however you're feeling, whatever you're needing, it's okay. Start from there and just get still and get calm and just appreciate that we are human beings, and stuff happens.
You mentioned that sort of spectrum, isn't it, of thriving? Because I think sometimes there is a perception that thriving it's an all the time thing, and people see, unfortunately, whether it's through social media, and we only post the things that are good, and that's what people tend to do. So they're thriving all the time. That's all I see from that person is great stuff. So they're thriving. Now, you also mentioned thriving is like when you're in your flow, and the fact that when you're in your flow is when you're cycling. So just expand a bit more upon that, and thinking about when you're not cycling, because you're not cycling right now, and you don't cycle all the time. I know you do a lot of cycling with your classes and outside your free time. Is it a momental? Is it a moment thing, or is it like a journey? How does it work? Because I think there's a lot to talk about thriving, but how do we get into a place where it's
you can thrive right now?
Yeah.
By full and total acceptance of this present moment, because I think that is the best you're going to get from any moment, and this moment is all we have. So yes, there's that idea of progression. Yes, there's the idea of small steps. Yes, there's that idea of something that's not unreachable, but is very much within your power, and is very much dictated by you and everything that's inside of you. But actually, that place of thriving can start just and can be just that acceptance. And I think so much we're just it's expectation and not acceptance. And so I talk about it on the bike. All of this stuff that I'm saying is sort of what helps me and what I share on the bike. So it just so happens we're riding a bike. I mean, you've experienced it yourself. That it's all of this. I mean, I would love if there's any of my riders that are watching or listening to this, they would be going through with some kind of tick box and saying bike chat, bike chat, bike chat. And it is that bike chat that I bring in, because it's what helps me. And I am a massively flawed human. And, because people say to me, wow, she's really got her stuff together because of how I come across on the bike, because riding my bike gives me the confidence. Riding my bikes gives me that wonderful presence, because I am so in my flow. I am so me. It is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm talking about all this stuff that's really helped me. But there's no way in this world that I am above bike chat. I still use this. I bike chat myself all day long. I've been bike chatting myself since the moment I woke up without my laptop this morning. The last 48 hours of preparing without my laptop, all of this stuff, it's just really human, and I just think to be that best example of a leader is to look at that idea of acceptance over expectation, to look at that idea of what thriving is seen to be successful, and it absolutely can be successful. But what is your definition of success? And one of the things that frustrates me the most is I hear these people and they talk about the idea of they were really successful but they weren't happy, and I think, well, that's the biggest oxymoron I've ever heard. What's your definition of success then if it's not happiness? And how can that's incongruent to me? It's just like, how can that be a thing that somebody is successful but not happy? I mean, it's just not. It just actually does not exist. That is not a thing. And I think I was talking to a friend of mine about this last night, and we've both been in that luxury brands and motorsport arena for a long, long time, and we caught up last night, and we were just walking on the beach, and and we're talking about the moment, like this crazy hyperinflation that's happening, the fear around all of that, and what I do is seen from the outside to be spinning. Yes, I've got spinning bikes. That is an absolute thing of this. I mean, when I launched it, because I was able to launch it as I do practically now, out and about with the bikes, I launched it as a movement experience, because I don't believe this is spinning. It's not fitness in that sense. It's so much more than that. It's a place for connection. It's a place for feeling and for empowerment. So, but when he asked me last night about putting up my prices, he said, everything's increasing for you, Elaine. I said, yeah, no, absolutely is. I'm no different to anyone else. I'm absolutely in that space. But why did I start this? I started this to be accessible mental health support for people, because that is what connection is. That is what this whole environment is. And there's so much around mental health support that is just so far out of reach for people. And I never wanted to be that. So I live a very simple life, because that is my balance at the moment. I'm in a new business, I'm acquiring, clients, etc., where I can, for example, the online business I ran for 2 years, I ran it on donations because I believe that it was a very difficult time for so many people. Yes, it was difficult for me. I was a new business, and what I was all about was bringing people together. And I believe that people needed to be together more than ever. Not everyone had a spinning bike, so I offered them the opportunity to be out and about, running, walking, paddleboarding, skiing, wherever they were in the world. They could connect on Zoom. We could do this together, and I still do that now for corporates. I did one recently for Bacardi out in Miami, and they were all running. So I still do that. I ride my bike. They move in the way they want to move. So it's kind of two threads to the business. But I always ran the online business for everyone on donations. My pricing model now, as it is still with that business value for me that's accessible. So because I believe it's a place where people can thrive. So I think you need to create the space for people to thrive. So again, if you're a leader in that environment, I'm leading my business because it's only me, and that's it's what I've set up. But it's about the space that you create for people, and you make it an accessible space, you make it a safe space, you make it a beautifully vulnerable space, you make it a space for movement and energy and whatever that may be. But when we talk about movement, you're thinking, yeah, but you ride your bike, that's what you do as your business. When I was in the corporate world and I was learning so much about the way in which I wanted to do things now, I would go for walking meetings because, again, for me, that movement and getting out in nature, there's things that can be practically applied wherever you are. My choice is riding my bike, but I might say to you, Jules, well, the way you're going to achieve your mind and body fitness goals, Jules, is riding a bike. And you say, well, I like walking, or I like running, and you can have this in your environment, your corporate workspace, and just say, I'm looking around. A lot of these people, they don't do very much activity right now. I've got one that likes skiing. I've got one that likes paddleboarding. I've got someone out here that likes running. I've got someone that just likes walking their dog. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Well, don't force them, because again, this is forcing, this is resisting, this is fighting. Just say yes, absolutely. You can absolutely achieve your mind and body fitness goals doing whatever movement you want to do. So, I can't bring the bikes to you, but that is an environment which will do that. So again, whether it's me or whether it's someone else, if they can create a movement experience, you get a lot of creativity going with that. You get, and also it's not confrontational, because if I've got somebody walking next to me, it's a bit like having a child in a passenger seat of the car. You'll get so much more out of them than when you will sat talking like this, going, come on then, you're right in my face and you're looking at me directly, and this is really awkward, this is really uncomfortable. So it's providing a space that is freeing for people and comfortable for people, because I think that's another thing. Like, there's all this talk about, we get the best out of you when you get outside of your comfort zone. So just constantly be outside of your comfort zone. Constantly get out of your comfort zone. You can't be comfortable, because you've got to feel really uncomfortable, and then we're going to break you down, and then we're going to, absolutely not. You can grow and heal and feel in comfort. And I think, why can't we challenge these environments, and say, actually, do you know what? I don't, that's a different kind of pushing. Maybe that's a being with, rather than a pushing or a pulling or a, just flow. Don't resist it. I think that is the thing about thriving.
Well, you picked up on, there's a few things I want to, again, touch on really. You talked about acceptance and just accepting where you're at, and that's it. Simple as that. And being almost, rather than trying to, strive, because I think often we get into striving mode and think we need to do that. But you also talked about connections, and a part of your business and your mission really is about connecting people, and having communities and people around you is really important. And that's, I think we often get caught up with the doing it on ourselves, but actually, it's good to have friends, not just family, but business colleagues around you to support you what you do, because we don't know all the answers. At times we find we're struggling, and we need someone to sort of support us and pick us up and encourage us, and give us a cup of tea or whatever it is that'll inspire us and get us going, and that momentum and movement. So on the just going back to the acceptance bit, how do you accept things? How do you sort of take stock and go, right, I'm going to accept it?
I fight it a bit at first. I fight it, and then
Yeah.
I remember. Actually, yeah. I mean, I try and bring myself into that moment, and the breath is always that one for me. So there's a lot more talked about it now, but your breath is one of the most grounding things. If you just get still and you just notice your breath, and actually you can just feel, you can bring yourself into that moment, and that's a really just very everyone breathes, but actually we don't pay much attention to the fact that we do that. I also, I use it in the warm up track. Most times I will say something along the lines of meet yourself where you're at, and no one raises your bar higher than you. You are in charge, but it's not a fixed place of thriving. It's not a fixed place of doing your best. And it's going to look different every day. So thriving this morning for somebody who's just had a shoulder operation is going to look like that. Whereas us, we could do that, and we could be great. But so it's all where you are in this. So it's as you say, it's that acceptance. And I just think the opposite to acceptance for me is expectation. And I think I'm incredibly hard on myself. I always have been. I've been that place of high achiever. That's always been my default. But actually, just that stillness again, and just saying acceptance, where I am is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and everything is happening for us and not to us. I do believe that is a thing. I mean, I've had an incredibly difficult year. Around, my dad died. It's coming up for a year now. Lost my grandson his 100th year. I started a business in lockdown, completely different to what, there's been various things that's happened for me. And so more than ever, I've really connected with what's important, and I've really noticed the people. So again, the connections that contribute rather than, I always bring it back to something like, if you had a pot plant and, in your home, and you think, if you're looking at that and you say, what does my plant need? And you're not much different. You need some water, you need some food, you need some light, all of these things. And actually, if you just bring it back to something so simple, there's so many things out there that are just, again, feel out of reach. And I think there's so much space, and there needs to be so much more space for just talking. And because otherwise, you say, we're all going around with a mask on. We're all products of social media. We're all reading and watching things that are really not helpful. And we think everyone's going around in this massive place of thriving. And the reality is we're really not. Most of us, it's a bit of a, it's messy. It's messy. Life is pretty messy. And I think to actually just say, yeah, today, I'm finding it hard. And it's not the people that then try to fix that. It's the people that you just sit there and allow you to feel, and know that it's okay to dip behind the clouds. But when you can, come back and shine your light. But you're not going to be that all the time. Again, nature provides us with beautiful cues. The tide will turn. The moon is not full all month round, but the moon is whole all month round. And I think, again, what I really admire in leaders that I get my inspiration from is that are those people who really, inspire you to level up. Absolutely. But they reassure you that where you are worthy, and worthy of love and belonging exactly where you are, and you are enough. I think there's the ego, it just craves those gold stars. And I just think, that's one reason I stripped all the computers off the bikes. We live in such an ego-driven society, and everything reminds us to strive, but striving from a place of numbers and metrics which might not be calibrated. Where's your starting point, and where's the end point? And actually you miss out on those juicy parts of life that are so wonderful, and messy can be really beautiful, if you're in a space that encourages it, and if you're in a space that accepts it and allows it and celebrates it. And that is what power is. I looked at the guys riding in the garage, which is where I started all of this on Friday night, and I looked around, and I had a beautiful mix of all ages, all fitness levels, all stories. I had 3 people out of 10 who had disabilities. They're all Down syndrome, and they were all riding together. And it was the most beautiful, energetic space. And smiling, crying, doing whatever, just feeling. And how many opportunities do we get to put our life on a rack for 45 minutes and be? And I just think that is why I will continue where I am at the moment. And I will not contribute to the hyperinflation. I will not contribute to that inaccessibility, because I think we need each other more than ever, and I want to give everyone the opportunity to keep each other close, to build teams, to find their tribe, and I say it on the bike all the time, and I just say it's not what we have in common, it's what we have in purpose. And I think you can look around your workspace all the time and go, wow, this is a eclectic bunch, and you think, what a bonkers group this is. How on earth have we been thrown together in the same room? It's no coincidence we have been thrown together in the same room. Everyone meant for you will never pass you by, and I totally believe that. People will come, they will go. But those people who are meant to be around you and the people that cross your path, they can teach you something, and you've got to be open to that. But it's about where are we going, in a progressive, messy way, and that's okay.
I like your analogy of the pot plant, and the reason I really like that, not only for the simplisticness of things we need, but if you look at a pot plant in the morning and throughout the day, it doesn't really change much. It might move a little bit towards the sunshine to get the sunshine, and even the next day it doesn't really do much. And you can't say at that moment it's thriving, that's not thriving. It's just being.
Yeah.
And I think for me, this thriving notion, which unfortunately becomes a little bit of almost a success mindset of, it's all about, if I'm thriving, I'm hitting the high peaks, my business is doing great stuff, and therefore I'm thriving. Actually, thriving, just based on our conversation, is about just, there's that acceptance piece, but it's also just being. Because when you're being, when you're in the moment, you are the most at peace, you're the most in control. And as soon as you start thinking of the future, whether that's future cost of living crisis, I'm not saying it will go away, you get into anxiety. And as soon as you start thinking of the past, which is what you can't do anything about it, you get depressed. So actually, it's about being in that moment. And I know being on
that is thriving for me.
Being on your bike rides, on your I call it spin session, but I know it's not called spin session. And looking out into the sea, and I thought of nothing else, but I was just in the moment, in my own little world. I even forgot I was with other people, and sometimes, I just thought I was just in the moment. I hear in your voice and you're talking, and that's the great thing about it. It's just finding that how you get more in the moment of life, whether that's even a conversation with you and I now, to try and be in the moment, fully present, fully here. That's all we're thinking
about. That's it. If you're constantly thinking of the next thing, and if you're constantly striving for the next thing, and if you're in that place of scarcity where it's never enough and there's always more, I'm all for ambition. I'm all for that. I wouldn't be here if that wasn't part of me. But I do believe that moment, that being in the moment, is the most wonderful place of thriving, really, and just being the truest you are to yourself is the richest place to be. And I love the idea of rich. I think I'm big on that, because there's so much related to success around richness. Again, how do you define that? Rich in people, rich in adventures, rich in memories, rich in perspective, rich in health. I mean, that is just, there's a whole bunch of cliches that can come out of it, but actually there's a whole bunch of truth that can come out of it as well. And I do think integrity is a rare and beautiful thing, and authenticity similarly, and discovering who you are, and then being brave enough to live it every day. And that is the same with knowing what you need and knowing who you need, and then being brave enough to choose it every moment of every day. I mean, we're not saying that you thrive and then you're done. That's it. I'm never going back. This is it. It's not a light switch. It's not that thing that you can turn on and turn off. So it's a constant work in progress. It's constant. So it's a conscious thing, isn't it? It's definitely a conscious thing. But like you're saying, you have to get still to know.
get in the moment, and it's holistic. As you talk about, it's not about just one aspect of your life. It's holistic of all who we do.
Well, so you say stay healthy, and you're like, well, what I eat and what I drink. You're like, no, what you watch, what you read, who you surround yourself with, all of that is staying healthy.
Yeah.
It's everything. You are a product of your environment. It's like your plant pot, and your potted plant. I mean, I'd be a wildflower over a potted plant any day, but the whole idea of being a plant, like it's just that whole thing of like, everything will bloom if you water it, including you.
Mm.
And it is just, I think I love nature for analogies and cues and reminding us what's important. I mean, the sun rises every day. The sun may rise slower today, and that's okay. That's a similar thing along surviving and thriving. And, all the stuff that I love to talk about on the bike. And yes, and the sun does not turn to the earth and say, you owe me, which is another, quote I love, because I just think, there's so much light in that, and so much which is free that we take for granted. And I think you can really inspire people from that place, which is what I hope to do and what I love to do.
Well, just before we finish, Elaine, I'd like to understand the story behind you being called the Chief Banana Officer, and why we have bananas at every event. You write some words which describe it. And everything's bananas. You're banana mad.
I absolutely am.
Was it just you just watched Banana Man when you were younger or something like that on TV?
I mean, anything bananas. I think I've been eating bananas as long as I've been riding a bike. It's play. And again, I think that's a wonderful thing that you can bring into any corporate organization, is play. And, and there's it's a wonderful opportunity for refuel for me. It's great if you've got something in your hand, if you're at if you're at a networking event, you're at a party, if you're doing whatever and you've got something in your hand, suddenly it just feels a little bit more comfortable. And, and as I said, I stripped the computers off the bikes and now everybody just has their banana. And similarly, if we're riding online and you're running or walking your dog or doing whatever, I introduced the lesser known BYOB, bring your own banana. And I'd say, Jules, do you want to share your banana word? And you go, bosh. Like that, and then I talk about it. So I'd say thriving. I'll talk about thriving, Jules, and then I will pretty much talk as we've just talked there. But so that was the idea about bringing the banana, because it gave me something to talk about. It gave people the opportunity, I think, as well, to capture a memory. If you write something down, I always find, for me, that's been a really helpful learning tool. So it makes you again very present, because you're really sort of thinking about what's and say it shorter. If it doesn't fit on a banana, I'm not interested. No justification, no explanation, no apology. You can get your message across really clearly, and that's actually a really kind thing to do. Being clear is being kind. So that was I mean, bananas, and it's brand, and I love brand. I've just brought everything into what I do. I say I never want to be spinning. It is a bananas business. I connect people one banana at a time. It's all of that sort of stuff. And people can stand at the end and they can say, oh, hi, Jules, my name's Elaine. Well, what's your banana word? Or, but by that time they might have already heard that I talked about it. I'd say, what was ever. But, there's always the opportunity to stand and chat, and it just gives people an icebreaker.
Yeah.
And I love the the interaction of it, and your word means something to you, could mean something entirely different to me. And again, that is unique and beautiful, and you don't need to share your banana word. I love it when you do. It's that kind of thing. It's play, and it's vulnerability, and it's capturing memories, and it's all that kind of thing. And the reason I'm Chief Banana Officer is because I have no idea. Labels are labels, aren't they? And that's another thing that I find very difficult, especially from the corporate background that I was in. I never wanted to be a coach. I'm not a coach. I share my experience. I move. I do that kind of thing. I'm not a fitness instructor. That's none of what I want to be. So I just want to be me, and being me is Chief Banana Officer. And it's not, and now I'm unashamedly me. And again, that's a progress thing. I mean, to have come from the world that I came from personally and professionally into the world I'm at now is more true than I've ever been to me. And that's kind of indescribable in a sense. So Chief Banana Officer was kind of the fit. It's kind of what I came to.
Sounds a brilliant name. I love the title of that. I wish I was a Chief Banana Officer.
Jules, you can be anything you want to be. It's never too late. No, but the whole thing as well is for me is I love it when people say, I'm buying bananas or I'm making a smoothie and I'm thinking of you. Is that weird? And I say, that makes my day. And I walk into the coffee shop and there's a banana lady. And I'm like, yeah, the kids. Oh my goodness, the kids. I ride with kids as well, which is just absolute magic. And and again, it's just for them, it's a character. It's somebody who's approachable and accessible and friendly and playful and it's just you.
Well, it's fantastic branding. It really is, and it is memorable. It's the most sold supermarket item in the UK. It's bananas,
mostly by me.
Mostly by you. It's been great talking to you, Elaine, and I really loved your insights on thriving and just that understanding of getting more in the moment and more being is helpful. But no, it's been really great. I valued that. And if people want to connect with you and find out more about what you do and how they can get involved in these sort of sessions with you, what's the best way of doing that?
LinkedIn, absolutely. Website, powerfitnessevents.com. Social media is a bit more up to date in terms of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think the important message for me is, yes, I have my bikes introduced. I have my bikes, my headphones, my bananas, and I can move about and get out and about with those. But I think the big one for me is I love connecting people through a screen. I think it's a really interesting opportunity. I have no idea whether it would work in lockdown. It absolutely worked. And yeah, so that's sort of any movement anywhere. And my audio experience is exactly the same as it is when you're riding with me anywhere on location as it is through a screen riding out in Miami as I did recently. So, and it's riding, it's just riding. So that's just movement. And yeah, so every opportunity, anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, I'd wholeheartedly recommend any of your sessions, having been to one that was on the beach, which was a great location and quite magical at sort of 6 a.m. But yeah, thank you for that. Well, thank you for today, Elaine. Really appreciate your time
Thank you, Jules.
for talking today.
Thank you.